Hi everyone, welcome to this week's webinar on advanced planning capabilities within Business Central. This is Mark here, and I'm going to be taking you through some of the apps that we have available for planning and how you can leverage Business Central to do that advanced planning within your organization. Now, what we want to talk about today though are the planning applications available for the manufacturing distribution organizations. So we're going to cover off both. We're going to cover off sort of planning in manufacturing and some planning if you're in a distribution environment. And for that, one of the key tools that we have available is what we call the Enhanced Planning Pack. And that one allows you to do some forecasting. It's got a much better planning worksheet, a planning dashboard that you can use for managing how you're planning, and a few other tools to round out managing your manufacturing and distribution planning requirements. Then we get into something like MX APS, and APS stands for Advanced Planning and Scheduling. So planning is in that title right there. And that's, once we've actually planned, predominantly for manufacturing, once we've actually planned, what we need to manufacture, we know what components we need and finished goods and everything. MX APS is going to do that planning and scheduling for us to give us something that we can actually use on the execution side to actually manufacture the products that we've planned. Graphical scheduler kind of goes with that. It's a way of planning out your production or your warehouse picks. We can actually do drag and drop scheduling for warehouse picks, for production orders, for quality inspections, all sorts of things from that graphical scheduler. And that's one of the free tools that I mentioned. So you plug that in and you've got the ability to use that for planning warehouse operations, manufacturing operations, all those sorts of things. And then we get to, again, in distribution and manufacturing to a certain extent, the order fulfillment worksheet. How do we plan what we get out the door today? So the fulfillment worksheet gives us that plan. It says, here's what you can actually execute today. Here's the plan that you can run, and then it'll automatically generate the requirements you need or the documents you need, like the picks and the shipments and everything else you need to get the stuff out the door. And then finally, Shop Floor Insight. That's more of an execution tool, not really a planning tool. But I put it in here because it becomes, something like this becomes important to get that real-time automated data back to feed back into your planning tools. So if I plan some grand scheme of how I'm going to produce something in the facility or what I'm going to ship today, all those sorts of things, and I don't do that, we don't know that. We don't know that it wasn't done. We might assume it's done, or maybe I did do it and we didn't record that it was done. Well, it's going to replan that same activity. Something like Shop Floor Insight gives us that feedback to ensure that our plans are accurate and timely. Okay, so more of an execution tool, but it does tie tightly into the planning stuff. So really what I want to do today is mostly focus on the Enhanced Planning Pack. So let's drill into that a little bit. So the Enhanced Planning Pack consists of a number of components. There's actually one more in here we'll talk about when we get into the demo, but one of the key ones is the Enhanced Planning Worksheet. That is going to be more of a dashboard type tool. So if you're using the requisition worksheet, don't, but if you are, great, or the planning worksheet within Standard Business Central, this kind of replaces that. So it does the same things under the hood, like if you're doing MRP planning within Business Central, it does that same MRP planning. But it gives you a much better tool to use, much better dashboard to understand why you're planning things, how to correct those plans, how to investigate what's going on. And then if you're in a distribution environment, standard MRP in Business Central does not work very well in that type of environment. It doesn't really work at all. Like if you're using the requisition worksheet, that is really not great. So the Enhanced Planning Worksheet includes purchase planning logic that is far superior for a distribution environment for doing your purchasing. So it won't give you all the noise you get with MRP, like it won't give you all the new cancel messages, all that kind of junk. And it's very fast. You can plan 100,000 SKUs in a few minutes probably, using the distribution planning or the purchase planning logic within the Enhanced Planning Worksheet. So we're going to cover both of those in the demo. And then we've got forecasting. So you might have seen in Business Central, like if you go into the item list, it's got a little fact box there that gives you your sales forecast or your inventory forecast at the bottom. It's pretty, but it doesn't really help you very much because it's a chart, and what are you going to do based on that? So the Enhanced Forecasting Worksheet uses the Microsoft machine learning model that's available. So it's AI in air quotes, but the machine learning model, it sends it all your information and it actually calculates out that forecast that you can actually publish your demand forecast or update your planning parameters and things like that to ensure that you're stocking the right product and you're not going to be out of stock. So it's a great forecasting tool for the environments that need that basic sales forecasting. And then we've also got the item planning review, which it's almost like manual forecasting. It goes out and calculates sort of your average usage over whatever period you specify, and you can use that to validate your reorder points, your mins and maxes and things like that, and actually evaluate how much of a product you're using and what your stocking levels are set to. So it's great for items that you don't want to forecast or items that you want to manage manually and those sorts of things. It's a very good tool there. And then for anybody in engineering, the multi-level BOM viewer gives you a much better tool for evaluating your bills of material and managing them, editing and those sorts of things. So definitely a big time saver there for engineering people. And then finally, the routing analysis, again, more for manufacturing, where I can compare my actual times to my expected times. And what that does is it ensures that my margins are accurate. So if I'm expecting to make 20% on this produced item, but my labor times are always way out to whack, I might be losing money on that product, and I may not know that until much later. This allows us to ensure that we're actually building that product at the cost we expect to build it at. And it also helps identify operations that are highly variable. In other words, we've got a process problem there where sometimes it's 5 minutes and sometimes it's 50 minutes to perform that activity. And it helps us figure out what's going wrong in the shop floor as well. All right, so those are some of the tools that are available for the Enhanced Planning Pack. So why don't we go in and actually have a look at what they look like. All right, so for this, I'm going to jump into my Business Central cloud environment here. And up here at the top, these 6 items are part of that Enhanced Planning Pack. And then we've also got MX APS, which I mentioned is the Enhanced Planning, Advanced Planning and Scheduling tool, and the Graphical Scheduler, which is the free tool that allows us to, plan picking, plan quality inspections, and plan production orders or anything else that you want to put on it. Now, back to the Enhanced Planning Pack, though. These are the guys that I mentioned in the PowerPoint, with the exception of this Enhanced Planning Vendor Summary. What that allows us to do is in a distribution environment, and in a manufacturing environment as well. But anytime you have multiple purchasers involved, and each purchaser may look after a certain subset of your vendors, this allows us to plan more at the vendor level than at the individual item level. So I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. Where we're going to start, though, is at the forecasting. First, we need some demand before we can do the planning. So let's go ahead and look at how we can evaluate what our demand might be within the organization. So when I open this one up, what it allows us to do is, set an item filter or an item category filter and location filter and a few other things. There's a variant filter in here we can use as well, and how we want to forecast that. So for this, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to take, one of my item category codes. I want to do a forecast for a chair, but I can forecast all my items for a specific location, those sorts of things. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to say I want to do a monthly forecast. And I want to forecast the next 3 months based on my last 12 months of history. So it will do seasonal planning and all those sorts of things, the seasonal forecast, all that kind of stuff. But this is fairly basic. I just set those values and then I hit calculate forecast. And what we do is we send out all the history that we have available for those items. And the machine learning model, the model online goes and crunches all the numbers and sends back our forecast. So you can see here for this first item, 1900-S, for these months, and by the way, my dates are way back here because that's where we have, the data for the Cronus demo system in Business Central. But for these months, it's telling me I need 11, and then 7 and 7. The next item, I need 6, 5, 5, those sorts of things, and it's given us our forecast. Okay? And over here, it's also calculated out some planning parameters. So it says, based on this forecast, if you didn't want to use a forecast, you could actually set your safety stock to 1, your reorder point to 1, and your max to 2 to account for the usage within this period. So what does that mean? That means a couple of things. With the results of this forecast here, I can go and hit update demand forecast. And that demand forecast is the standard demand forecast within Business Central and I can create a new one or add it to an existing forecast that I have. So all those values you see there would get added to that forecast, and now I can use that in MRP in the planning worksheet to use that forecasted demand when I'm doing the planning. And I could have multiple. I could run different scenarios and have multiple different forecasts. So we can update that demand forecast with these values. But if I don't want to use forecasting, maybe I just want to use my min-maxes. I just want to forecast and set my min-maxes based on my forecast requirements. Well, the way we do that is we hit this update item planning, and it'll set the values that you see here. The way it gets these values is entirely up to you. So let me just show you how that works. I'm just going to go into the forecasting setup here. And you can set up your own formulas to calculate out those mins and maxes. So here I'm saying for my safety stock, I'm going to take my average daily usage and I'm going to multiply it by my lead time days. So if you sold an average of 1 a day and my lead time was 7 days, my safety stock is going to end up being 7. So you've got a whole bunch of these variables you can use within these formulas to calculate out your own values for reorder point, maximum inventory, safety stock, and those sorts of things. All right. So that's the other way you can use it. So again, you select your filters that you need. You select your period and the number of periods. You hit go, and here's your forecast. We can then update the demand forecast, and then standard MRP and the planning system is going to run based on this sales forecast. If we don't want to use a forecast, we hit update item planning, and based on your formulas, it's going to go ahead and set those values, the planning parameters on the stock keeping units or on the items to these values here. So pretty simple, really easy to use. And if you want more information about how it calculates this forecast, there's a few other fields you can add in here as well, like the algorithm that it uses to do the forecasting, those sorts of things. And if you want more information about how this works, you can actually go into the standard Business Central forecasting setup, the sales and inventory forecast setup, and there's a button here that says Open Azure AI Gallery. So we're using that AI model to do the forecasting. And I've already done that. This is it here, and this will give you a ton of technical details about how that model works and how it's doing the forecasting and what you can send it and all of those sorts of things to get the forecast results. So this gives you the details on how it's doing the forecasting and what the results mean and what the parameters that we're sending in do. Okay, so for example, like I said, the algorithm that's being used, those sorts of things you can set if you make that field visible in Business Central. So at any rate, that's how the forecasting works. We send all your data to the Azure AI gallery there, the model on Azure AI, crunches the numbers, sends it back. You can update the demand forecast or update our item planning. Pretty simple. All right, now the other way we can do this, I mentioned the item planning review as well. So this is kind of like manual forecasting. It's very similar to what we saw in the forecast, but this is intended to allow you to sort of manually go in and adjust your planning parameters based on usage. So I can say, you know what, starting February to April here, I want to do a weekly summary, and I'll just do all items and all locations, but there's a bunch of filters you can set here to eliminate anything that has no usage or whatever. And when I go in and I generate this, what it's going to do is it's going to calculate out that usage, and this is component usage and sales usage, and give me my average weekly usage over that period. And I'll just sort here so we get a few with actual values in it. And what it does, it tells me exactly how many I've used, my inventory, all the information I need to then go and evaluate, do my planning parameters make sense? And if they don't, I can actually come down here and edit those planning parameters and set them to whatever I need them to be, right? If I want to change the reorder point or whatever else, I can actually come in here and make those changes right at the bottom. Or if you like, you can send that out to Excel and use whatever formulas you want to calculate those, reorder quantities and all that sort of thing, and then pull them back into Business Central. So it's a great report just for even just getting your average usage. But then the big advantage here is I can quickly go through and determine, do these values make sense? And I can manually edit them. So if you don't want to use the forecast worksheet, you can use this to do that similar type of review and manually set your reorder points and everything else. Okay, so that's the item planning review form. Now, once I've got that demand set, so I've set my mins and maxes, or I've done a demand forecast or whatever, I'm going to need to plan for that demand. So the way we do that, of course, is the enhanced planning worksheet. So when I open that guy up, sorry, that was my scanner starting as well on the side. So we'll open this guy up, and I'm going to go into the edit mode here, and I've got my purchasing batch, and it's empty to start with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run a plan real quick. So there's two ways we can run that plan. One is this regenerative plan, and if you're using the planning worksheet, the standard planning worksheet in Business Central today, or the requisition worksheet, that's basically what you're running. So it's the same logic. If I run that, it's going to run the core Business Central logic, and it's going to generate my plan based on that logic. So exactly the same as if I went into the planning worksheet and hit that button. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the purchase plan. So incidentally, this regenerative plan, that's typically what you'd use if you're in a manufacturing environment where dates and everything are very important. The calculate purchase plan is more what you'd use in a distribution environment. So it does support both distribution and manufacturing. And you can use them, either one for either manufacturing or distribution, but typically this is used for distribution. So when I go into this calculate purchase plan, what it does is it gives me a bunch of options here. And I won't necessarily get too technical on this. If you install this in the trial mode, it's got a description of what each of these things does. But I can plan just my transfers. So I can transfer product between locations. If you've got a DC that's supplying stores or other warehouses and things like that, then you can look at just your transfers, or you can look at replenishment for sales, your forecast, your mins and maxes, or just the transfers, or just the external demand. And then you can include or exclude existing purchases. I just got that set up because I've got a few other things. And here's an interesting one for people that do have seasonal businesses, where the default is, we're going to use the reorder point. That's my minimum quantity, right? So if I go in there and I've got a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 50, if I'm sitting at 20, it's not going to tell me to reorder it, right? Because I'm above my minimum reorder point. However, at the start of the season, maybe it's since January, and you're ordering your summer stock, you may want to maximize your inventory. So you use this, and if I'm sitting at 20 with a min of 10 and a max of 50, it's going to try and bump me up to 50. It's going to tell me to order another 30 because we want to maximize our purchasing for those seasonal products, because we're going to get a discount from the vendor and all that sort of thing when we do that big booking order for our seasonal products. So it has tools like that to help for that seasonality. And there's a bunch of other stuff here, but I'm going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to do just my main location and hit OK. And again, we can plan off the forecast as well, and it's going to do the min maxes. And this is actually very fast. So as I mentioned, we've got customers that have 100,000 stock keeping units, and this will run in a few minutes. And the nice thing about that is you can actually also run this in the job queue. So you can have it run periodically throughout the day, or just overnight. In the morning you come in and you've got your purchase plan, and away you go. And it can be additive, right? So what that means is I may already have, say, this front wheel on my planning worksheet. When I run it again, if I've got more demand for that front wheel, it'll just add to that. And I can just keep running that until I'm ready to cut my purchase orders. And the way we see if we're ready or not is if I scroll down here, and by the way, this is very similar to the planning worksheet. It tells me it's purchase or production or whatever. And I am actually able to come in here and change the replenishment system and where I'm supplying it from and everything right from here. And if you're using the purchase plan, it's not going to give you those new cancel messages that you're used to in the standard logic. In other words, if I was running the standard MRP, and if I change this to, say, a production order or a transfer order to replenish this product, the next time I run the plan, it's going to tell me to cancel that transfer order, as an example, and recreate the purchase order. I don't want to do that. I changed that for a reason. With the purchase planning logic, it won't tell you you need to change that back and cancel a transfer or purchase order or whatever. So it is a lot more friendly as far as the amount of messages and noise you get within the system. But back to what I was originally saying, I've got this thing that's supposed to be purchased. How do I know if I'm ready to buy that or not? Well, if I scroll down here, we've got the vendor planning summary. And this is telling me for this particular vendor here, for this location, this is what I'm planning on buying from that vendor, right? I'm planning on buying 53,000, quantity of 53,000, but more importantly, I'm planning on buying almost $73,000 of product from them. And this one doesn't have any minimum set up, but I might get prepaid freight or discounts if I buy a certain dollar amount. If I buy $50,000 worth of product, I may get a discount. So it'll tell us, it'll highlight it in green and everything else, tell us that we're ready to purchase because we've exceeded our minimum threshold. So I can keep this sort of like a running tab until I'm ready to purchase from this vendor. And the way we do that, I'm just going to back out of this. Since it picks up here. The way we do that is with this enhanced vendor planning summary. So this tells me after I've run my planning worksheet, and again, I can run that planning worksheet periodically and it just keeps adding. I can come in, these are the vendors that I'm responsible for. So these are my vendors that I've set up, and you can assign vendors to specific purchasers. These are the vendors that I care about. This is what I'm planning to buy from the vendors. This is my prepaid. So you can see this guy here, I've exceeded my sort of threshold for buying from them, and we can do dollar amount or weight. I've exceeded my threshold, so I can actually go in and cut the purchase orders for this vendor because I've met my minimum that I want to buy from for this vendor. So this allows me to see at the vendor level what I'm planning to purchase, right? So here's one where we've got some pending lines. I haven't approved the purchases from that vendor yet, so we've got nothing to buy. But from here, I can just hit planning worksheet, open up the planning worksheet for this vendor, and execute those purchase orders. So this is a great tool, again, if you're in a distribution environment or even a manufacturing environment where you've got multiple buyers. If I've got somebody that strictly looks after raw material and other people that look after components and somebody else that looks after something else, they can all manage their own vendors independently, see exactly what their spend is going to be, and manage it at the vendor level. So hugely valuable there. Let's go back into the planning worksheet real quick, and we'll talk more about what the thing can do. We'll go back into the edit mode here. So a couple other things that add a ton of value. Just over here, it seems like a minor point, but this fact box that gives me visibility into my supply and demand is very useful, right? So I can come in here, I can see exactly what I've got in stock, what I'm planning on manufacturing in this case, and what I'm going to be left with as supply, and then what I have for demand on that. So I might look at this and say, you know what, this is ridiculous. Why am I going to end up with 306 of these things, after I'm done this plan? So quick glance, I can see if I've got an issue, and I'll show you how we deal with that in a sec as well. I can also see what other locations have in stock, and down here, it can break it out at the per location level. So these location settings are per user, so I can go in and say, these are the locations that I care about, and some other user may have different locations. And I can see exactly what they have on hand and what's actually available. So I might say, you know what, why am I manufacturing 100 of these when one of these other locations has 500 in stock, and I can just transfer them in instead. And then again, I just go change that method to transfer instead of manufacturing. And we talked about the vendor planning summary and that sort of thing. So these fact boxes are actually very useful from a planning perspective. Then if we go down, I'm actually just going to grab another item here that I know we have some history on. So this one, it's telling me that I need to purchase 50 of these, right? So this is a purchased item and I need 50. And I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to have a whole bunch in stock. This makes no sense. Does that 50 actually make sense? So if I go down at the bottom here, we've got these tabs, and one of the nice ones is this chart. If I open up that chart, it gives me a very quick way to visually verify, does that quantity on this line make sense, this 50? Well, here I can just instantly see I never need more than 15-ish at any given time. And by the way, this blue line here, that's my purchases. I can click on that and drill down, and it'll open up all my purchase history for that item. And same thing, I can drill down on the sales. And that's not just purchase, that's purchase production, anything that's replenishing. And then this guy down here is all my sales. So I can drill down and get the history on each individual month. And you can set this up to be 2 years or 6 months or 1 year or whatever you like. Again, very quick and easy. This number does not make sense now because I can see we never need that many, and I'm going to have a whole bunch left over that I clearly don't need. So what do I do about that? Well, if you're in Standard Business Central, I change this quantity, and next time I run this, it yells at me and tells me to cancel my purchase order and create a new one or change the quantity, or just gives me a hard time. What I really want to do is come in here and say, why did it tell me to order this 50? Well, here I can see I've got a minimum order quantity of 50, and I've got some min-max stuff set up here. So I can actually go in and adjust these planning parameters right here. Rather than having to click like 10 times to get to this field within the item card, or in this case, the stock keeping unit card, to make that adjustment, I can make those changes right here. This is another thing that just seems obvious. It seems so simple, but this saves literally hours a week, just being able to evaluate what these things are without clicking a bunch of buttons to get into the item card or the stock keeping unit. This is hugely useful. And again, I can make all those adjustments right here. Okay. So those two are really useful. There's also order tracking if you've got the order tracking stuff turned on, or if I want to see my supply demand, like my ins and outs for that particular item, I can see what's planned, my sales, my forecast, all of that shows up here to sort of give me my running total of ins and outs. And the history, this is sort of the tabular view of what we saw on the chart, right? It just shows me all the history for that particular item. So really just a nice dashboard for going in, running the plan, and figuring out what you need to do and why you need to do it. So anybody that's using the planning worksheet today, I guarantee you, I feel your pain. I used to use it myself. You're struggling with figuring out what the heck this number means, like where is that coming from? And it's taking you forever to deal with a plan that's got a bunch of new cancel messages and change quantity and all that. All of that goes away if you're running the advanced planning worksheet. You've got everything you need right here to solve that, and it's literally going to save you hours a week by using this. Right? So, and a whole bunch of other goodies in here, just little sort of quality of life improvements like being able to accept or unaccept all messages and various things, being able to come in and do your drop shipments and your special orders from the same planning worksheet instead of having to flip into the requisition worksheet, things like that. All of those sorts of things, just the nice to have stuff that's just going to streamline your daily job of running this plan. Okay. All right. So that's the plan worksheet. And again, I covered off the calculate purchase plan, the regenerative plan. Same thing. I run that. It's going to run the standard Business Central MRP and calculate everything I need to manufacture along with the components and all that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. So that is the planning worksheet. Now, one of the other things on here, since I just mentioned, it's going to plan the components and everything else if you run the MRP, is managing those components. So that's what the multi-level BOM viewer is for. So it's very similar to the structure view within Business Central, but it has a lot of things that, again, are these quality of life improvements that are going to make your life easier, and it's going to save you time on a daily basis. So more for engineering, but really anybody, purchasing, salespeople could use this. So the idea behind this is I bring in the production BOM, and what it'll do is it'll give me sort of an exploded view of that bill of materials. A couple of things it allows me to do, though, is set a quantity. Like, let's say I'm looking at that particular bike and I need to manufacture 5 of these, maybe by a certain date. So I can set in a date filter there and everything else. And it's going to give me my supply demand profile on here as well. So I can actually come in here and see, I've got 6 on a production order for this item. I can see what my supply is. And then this demand here is based on this quantity of 5 I've set. And so it's telling me if I want to manufacture 5 of these, and I can again set a date here, I'm going to be short 9 of this component. I'm going to be short, 555 of that component. So it's a quick way to quickly see for a production BOM, do I have availability to produce this particular product. And if I scroll over, it's got a few other fields, like I can see if it's manufactured or purchased or whatever else, those types of things. And I can just hit this show card to bring up the item card to adjust it. Or if I'm on a production BOM, right? So this is a production BOM within that main BOM, hit that, it'll bring up the production BOM. But even nicer than that is if I come in here and I say, you know what, I'm going to do a substitution or I've changed the revision on this, I'm not going to do this front hub, I can hit edit line and I can come in there, and without having to go into the top level BOM and mark it under development, make the change and then recertify it and all that, I can just come in right here, hit edit, make whatever changes I want to that BOM line. It'll do all of that fun stuff behind the scenes for me. So it'll put it under development, it'll allow me to edit it, and it'll recertify that BOM for me. Or if this BOM wasn't certified, it'll leave it uncertified. And it's really quick and easy to come in here, review my bill of materials, and make adjustments to it right from the screen. And if you want to get fancy, you can actually come in here and use the diagram view and sort of get a visual view of what that bill of material looks like as well. And again, here it gives us right on this sort of visual view what our availability is based on those quantities. And same thing, I can come in here, click on this, and edit that particular BOM item right from this view here as well. Okay, so that's the multi-level BOM viewer for sort of managing it from a engineering perspective. Or again, salesperson can come in here and very quickly see, what are we going to be short on to produce that quantity of product, right? Okay, now, so what we did was we went in, we did some forecasting or set our planning parameters, our mins and maxes. We went into the enhanced planning worksheet, we ran the plan, either the purchase plan or the manufacturing plan, and we've got our production orders, those sorts of things. And now we actually need to execute this stuff. So a couple of ways we can do that is, one is with the graphical scheduler, right? So I can actually go in and review the plan that Business Central has produced for my production activities. So I'll go in there. As a matter of fact, let's actually do this guy. I'm just switching to a different company that's got some warehouse stuff in it as well. So when we come in here, very, very straightforward. The default behavior is it's going to show me production orders on this graphical schedule. So I can come in here and see all my production orders. I can see what the planned schedule for these production orders are. We can change colors if it's late or if it's finished or whatever we want to do. So I can plot whatever data I want in here, and I can adjust the plan by dragging and dropping. So if I want to move this back or change, where it's supposed to run, those sorts of things, I can do that drag and drop, and it'll sort of replan that order for me based on that new date and time or new work center that I've dropped it on, those sorts of things. So the graphical scheduler for production, pretty straightforward. It's a Gantt chart. I can drag and drop all those sorts of things. But it does more than that as well. And again, this is a free tool, and you can use it to plot any data you like. So you can create whatever views you want. So if I just open up, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to actually edit it. If I come in here and edit this view, just to show you what we can do, I can come in, hit this add data source, so I can create a new view, and I can plot any data I want. So anything within Business Central, I can put on that chart. And what's cool is you can even do a calendar view on this chart. So if you don't want a Gantt chart, if you want a calendar style view, you can do that as well. So let me show you a couple things. A couple of things on here that is non-production related. We've got the warehouse picks, we've got quality inspector, all that kind of stuff as well. So if I go in, oops, close this. So, we've been talking manufacturing, but if I go into my my warehouse picks, wherever they are, here they go. I can actually come in and use this pick assignments, and guess what this is loading up? This is loading up our graphical scheduler in a view where I can actually see all the outstanding picks in my environment and when they're scheduled to be done and who they're assigned to. So I can actually come in here and drag and drop these things around and say, I need to execute this pick by this date, and it's now assigned to this particular individual. So this is how we can plan out our picks. And like I said, because you can plot whatever data you want on this chart, I could have my sales orders listed here as well, or my production orders, and I can show my picks alongside my production orders. So I can execute my pick for that production order when the production order is supposed to start. So this is how we can sort of plan us doing picks. And as I mentioned, the quality inspector stuff as well, we can do the same thing there. Actually, one last thing on this. What I was actually going to show you, you know what, I'm not going to show you here. I was going to show you the calendar view because you can't see it in a calendar view as well. But just for fun, I'm going to show you here. So I can actually come in on any of these and zoom in, and I can have a calendar view. For production, you know, calendar view isn't really that useful, but then it's just like Outlook, right? I've got my days, and I can drag and drop across days. So if you want to have your tasks or to-dos or whatever, and you want to plan those, you can do that as well. So the graphical scheduler gives you a lot of capability, and it is completely free. You plug it in, and you can do all of that stuff with it. Okay, so after we've done our planning, and this is another graphical scheduler view where I've put in the machine loading up at the top here. That's just configuration and the colors and everything else. So that's another way we can display it. So that's the graphical scheduler to help you plan that. The last one is the automated production schedule, which that'll go out and it'll plan my production for me based on my capacities within the facility and the material availability. So we've run that enhanced plan, and we know we've got a purchase order coming in next week. Well, I don't want to start production until that purchase product is available. This will allow us to do that. So it won't actually plan any of the work within the facility until I have the appropriate material and appropriate labor available, and it'll automatically schedule that work based on the capacity in my facility. So I'm not going to get into this in a lot of detail because we're almost out of time here. I said 45 minutes and we're almost there, but it does give us the ability to go in, run what if scenarios, look at the quality of that plan, and view that plan graphically, just again in the graphical scheduler. And I can drag and drop and all sorts of stuff here as well. But this gives me my plan for manufacturing. And again, if I wanted to put my warehouse picks in here, or my quality inspections in here, or my warehouse shipments or sales orders or whatever I like, I can plot all of that data on the same chart to help facilitate the planning within my area. Okay, and the last one I mentioned in the PowerPoint was the order fulfillment worksheet. I won't really get into that, but after we've sort of planned everything, and then we've received it through purchasing or we've manufactured it, we need to plan our fulfillment operations, and that's where we'd get into the order fulfillment worksheet, where we'd go in and it'll give us a plan for what we can actually get out the door today. Okay, so that would be the last item. Actually, you know what, I lied. I said I wasn't going to show it, but I'll briefly bring it up. We're going to the order fulfillment worksheet. And what this does is it calculates out a plan that we can actually use to execute warehouse picks, inventory picks, or just picking directly to the sales order. And it'll tell me exactly what's possible to do today. So can I partially ship this or fully ship it? Those sorts of things. It'll give me my plan, and I can use this to automatically generate the documents I need to execute that plan, as in the shipments or the picks. Okay, and this thing can also run in the job queue. So again, every morning, hey, here's all the picks that are created, or every hour it runs, and here's all the picks that are created, and away I go. Okay, so I think that covers off everything I wanted to show there. So the value proposition. Let's go through this. So I mentioned most of this during the demo, but the enhanced planning worksheet, the big deal there is it's going to save you tons and tons of time, right? The planners that are dealing with this stuff, sitting there and clicking 70 times to get into the data you need to see, that's just painful. That goes away. So that ensures you're making those right planning decisions. You can evaluate, this number is wrong. I know it's wrong because I can visually see that it's wrong right there on the same screen, and I can make adjustments right there. It's going to improve your inventory management, and it's going to reduce the time for those purchasers or production planners. The forecasting worksheet, obvious what that's going to do is it's going to give you a guide as to what you're likely going to need to supply your customers. Simple as that, right? And it's very quick and easy to use. Plug it in, and away you go. Uses the Microsoft machine learning model. It's all documented on the Azure AI site there like you saw, and you can look at how it works and what it does. The item planning review, that one's really useful as well. Before we had the forecasting, we have tons of people using that because, especially if you're seasonal, you want to adjust those mins and maxes and things like that as you're, progressing from one season to another. Even if you're not seasonal, just to go in there and see maybe we've got obsoleted stock or whatever, just to identify those items and be able to adjust them is hugely important to be able to do. And then finally, writing analysis, which I didn't actually show you, and I won't. Maybe I will. What that does is, again, it helps increase your profitability, because you know that when I run a standard cost on something, or I see an expected cost for production, I know that's going to be accurate because I get to feed back the actual times in and make those adjustments to make sure that my actual times are the same as my expected times. And then the one that I didn't, the reason I'd show you this is the process variability. It also calculates statistically what the variability for a specific operation is. So if I've got a high degree of variability, I've got a problem in my shop, right? If it takes Joe an hour to weld it and Fred 2 hours to weld it and somebody else 5 hours to weld it, I've got a major problem there. Something is wrong that's causing that level of variability, and I need to fix that, because that's likely going to lead to quality issues and profitability issues and all sorts of things. So it can do all of that kind of stuff for you. So bottom line is, Enhanced Planning Pack is going to save you a ton of time, and it's also going to help improve your inventory, like your stocking levels and everything else as well. And then the cost for all of this is, so the Enhanced Planning Pack is $150 per month per location. So there's no user limit or anything else. You can have 5 purchasers in your distribution center using it, and it's just that one cost. And that includes all of those things I showed you, the forecasting, the enhanced planning, the item review, BOM viewer, all that kind of stuff is part of that cost. If you want to look at the MX APS, which is the advanced planning and scheduling, then that's priced by the number of production orders, but it starts at, I think, about $150 a month as well to automate all of your production scheduling for you. Graphical scheduler, completely free. Don't even have to tell us you have it, just grab it and away you go. Order fulfillment worksheet is also $150 a month per location. So again, you can have multiple people using it. Typically, you'll have one warehouse supervisor using it per location, but that alone will save you that in the first day you use it, easily, guaranteed. Because those guys out there in the warehouse trying to mess with this are taking all day to do what this thing can do in about 5 minutes. So anyway, that'll save you that amount of money in the first day you use it. And then Shop Floor Insight we didn't get into, but if you do have questions about that, I'll give you some links in a sec. And that's priced by the number of employees that are actually using it out in the facility. All right, so if you do have additional questions on any of this, you can go to planningfordynamics.com or schedulingfordynamics.com, and it'll give you more information about those 2 specific tools. Or if you go to iwx.app, that'll give you a list of all the applications available, and you can filter by manufacturing or distribution or type of product or whatever you like. On any of those sites, you'll be able to get some more detailed videos on the products and get access to our knowledge base from there. If you go to the support link, it'll take you to the documentation and everything else you need for those products. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content.